We are wrapping up an amazing 21-day adventure aboard the Norwegian Dawn as we've sailed from Cape Town, South Africa, all the way to Barcelona, Spain.
In this video, we're going to tell you about this unique itinerary and to give you the inside scoop on some of the ports, the ship, and much, much more. So stay with us. Hi, I'm Cara.
And I'm Rex, and we're the Roaming Roundtrees. In 2022, we sold our house and all of our belongings. We packed up 2 carry-ons and 2 backpacks and started traveling around the world.
We're coming to you from our cruise cabin, which is a balcony cabin on the Norwegian Dawn. The Dawn started sailing in 2002, and it was recently refurbished in 2021. It only has about 2,300 passengers, so it is a mid-sized ship.
This was a unique repositioning itinerary, which in cruise terms means the Dawn was sailing the Southern Africa itinerary since October, and they needed to move it up to Europe so that they could sail there in the summertime. So this is that cruise that got it from the bottom of Africa all the way back to Europe, and we're taking advantage of that.
Many times, repositioning cruises are less expensive than just cruising the regular patterns. So we look to take that to reposition ourselves around the world as often as we can.
It also gives us a lot of unique itineraries and ports that we may not otherwise be able to get to.
We were scheduled to make 11 stops in 8 different countries along the way. This itinerary also had 10 sea days as we made our way to Barcelona. Now that you've seen the map, and you know what the itinerary looks like, let's get into each port one by one.
Our port of departure was Cape Town, South Africa. We actually arrived 3 days early so that we could take advantage of some of the things that Cape Town has to offer.
They have an amazing wine region there. So we did spend a day wine tasting, and their wines are fantastic. So if you find one in a store and it says South Africa, give it a try.
Definitely. We rode the gondola all the way up to the top of Table Mountain and walked all the way to the other side.
That was quite an unexpected day. It was my fault.
It was. We weren't planning to do that, but we did it.
Sometimes you just have to go for it. And then we experienced one of the windiest days we ever had at Cape Point, which is the furthest southwesterly point of the continent.
We went down to visit the lighthouse, and the winds were hurricane speed when we got there. Very interesting.
If you want to experience it or close to experience it yourself, check out this video that we'll post right there.
We set sail in the late afternoon and had a beautiful sunset overlooking Table Mountain as we sailed away.
We enjoyed Cape Town a lot and do plan to visit the location again in the future. Now, our first stop on this journey was Walvis Bay in Namibia. Since I'm such a bird nerd, y'all already know that, we had to book the birding tour. Now, when we had first started looking at shore excursions and things for this cruise, we were noticing that there wasn't a lot posted out there.
True.
There was a handful, and even on the NCL page. So, Viator and Shore Excursion Group and some of the other reputable companies didn't even have any listed for this cruise. So that we want to get off the ship and we want to do something in that port, we really need to do it with the cruise line. So they happened to have a birding tour on their list of excursions. So we booked that right away. It was a wonderful tour.
You like birds more than I do. I enjoy birds. She's really fond of them. So I think it was a better tour for you than it was for me. But I enjoyed it. It was good.
And it was small. So we only had another couple in the vehicle with us. So it felt like a private tour, even though they had to convoy us through the area, which we'll get to more later at one of the other ports. This was an interesting port because we needed to do face-to-face immigration on the ship before disembarking. We had our shore excursion tickets and all of that. They had called for those folks that had NCL shore excursions first to go to the immigration and have that dealt with. Well, as it turned out, and you guys probably already see this coming, nobody cares what any of the announcements say, and they want to be in that line first. Yeah. Doesn't matter what's going on. They feel they're entitled to be in that line first. Needless to say, that backed everything up. So the first 3 tours didn't go out on time because they couldn't get through the line. Finally, at some point, one of the officers stepped in and started trying to navigate, pull people out of line that had the yellow tickets that at certain times and try and get them ushered in the back way to get their immigration. And they halted the immigration in the regular line. So they were trying to do something. But when people don't follow the announcements and the rules and what's expected, it really creates a problem. And it sure did that day. So we actually waited in line over an hour. Our tour was late. It got hot in there. There was a couple actual physical altercations in the line between people. It wasn't us, but other people. Wasn't us, but other people right in front of us, and they were calling security. It was a nightmare. It made for a stressful beginning to what turned out to be a very good day. So we shook that off and went on our tour and came back feeling good again.
Our next stop was in Luanda, Angola. We took a tour, again, from the cruise line called The Changing Face of Luanda. And this was really meant to showcase how their city is growing and becoming more metropolitan. And maybe it is, but I'm, again, not sure that it met the expectation there.
No. What's hard, too, is sometimes on repositioning cruises, you end up in ports that aren't heavily trafficked by tourists. So where they did make a very good effort to be ready for all of us, which they did. This was one of the caravans. This was one of the areas they had to have police escorts everywhere. And they basically just transported us from one point to another point to another point to the another point where we needed to just get off. We had 15 minutes, get back on, drive to the next point. And when you get off with another whole horde of people, and then you're trying to do 15 minutes in a location, and then you have to come back, we didn't get the information about the city or the country as we wanted to. The tour guides didn't speak English very well. They didn't understand English well enough to answer any of our questions. So it was one of those silent bus rides to the next location. They knew how to say 15 minutes. And that's what we had. And we had to pick up whatever we could in foreign languages as we were in various places. It made it a little hard, but we got through it. We enjoyed getting off the ship and seeing the new places, which is something we always love to do. Mm-hmm. And you know, it was a worthwhile stop. Not sure it was worth the dollar signs that Norwegian charged us for the tour. Yeah. But again, we heard this a couple times, and you're going to hear it a couple more times through this video, is you're in Africa. So
it's kind of the way they explain everything. Well, you are in Africa.
We got that a lot. Okay. This was around the time we started noticing some changes in how the ship operated. Mm-hmm. We at first, right when we boarded, I noticed that there was no salt and pepper shakers on the tables anymore. And I said, can I get salt and pepper? And they brought us the little salt and pepper packets. And I thought that was odd. I'm like, is Norwegian changing something? And then when we asked our server, they said, oh no, there was a stomach bug on the last sailing. So we're just making sure those are all disinfected very well before we put something shared on your table. Okay, that's good. Well, then right around this port time, we started noticing that there was no plates, no silverware. You couldn't serve yourself at the buffet anymore. Right. You couldn't get your own water, no coffee. Any of that was off limits. And we quickly figured out that there was some form of stomach bug that was starting to make its way around the ship.
And their new protocols kicked in, and they had to start following all these new procedures. And so, and we dealt with that for the rest of the cruise. It never changed.
It never changed, not at all.
They were serving us every time we went to the buffet, or they waited for us to sit down before they would bring plates and silverware, even in the dining room.
It was a unique experience. We never got whatever was going around, thank goodness. But I guess it was big enough to make the protocols happen around the ship. They even went so far as in the dining room to cease shared tables. So even if you got there, you had to sit just with whoever you came with. And, you know, if you were looking to meet other people and things, you're going to have to do that somewhere else.
São Tomé was our next stop. This is a small island off of the coast. And this was also the first tender port that we had. For those of you that aren't familiar, tendering is when the cruise ship can't get into a physical dock, so they lower the lifeboats, and then they use those smaller boats to drive you up to the shore. So this usually always causes a big traffic jam when it comes to getting off the ship because it's a much slower process.
Now they do drop a bunch of boats down in the water to try and handle that first surge that happens, and then there'll be a bunch of boats in the water too at the end of the day when they're bringing everyone back to try and make sure that that process runs smoothly.
We did not have a shore excursion booked for this day, so we waited for the crowds to clear and then just went down when the boats were free to jump on one and go ashore. We wanted to walk on the land because we'd never been to this country before, and so we didn't have anything planned. We just were going to walk around, see what we could find, and there really wasn't much there, so we didn't spend a lot of time on shore once we were there.
We did go to the little market and the grocery store. I mean, we love going to grocery stores when we're in a new country. So we went to their grocery stores and, just walked the small town and engaged with some folks, but there really wasn't anything for us to buy or to do. So we just headed back to the ship.
Yeah.
Well, and this was the location where those 8 passengers got left behind on the island. So, in a tender port, you want to make sure you are back before that last tender is going to sail. They didn't make it back. They left a tender in the water at the dock for over an hour for these folks. And you can watch our video right up here on that as well if you're interested in how that went down and what our take is on how you can make sure that you get back to the ship on time.
After São Tomé, the next stop was Gambia. Now, before our cruise, the cruise line told us that visas were going to be required for citizens of the United States in our case, and that they would be handled by the cruise line. They would take care of all of that for us, and a simple $25 charge would be added to our onboard account for
per person.
Per person. That sounded great. Much simpler than trying to apply for them ourselves. Mm-hmm. When we boarded the ship, we kind of got the old Gambia switcheroo, and they said, "Oh, did we say $25? It's now $150 per person." So there was really no way for us to say, "No, I don't want to do that." So
we weren't permitted to board without signing that would go onto our cruise account.
Right.
So, and even if there was somebody standing next to us that said, "Well, we're not planning to get off in Gambia. Can't you just flag our card so that we can't get off in Gambia and we won't pay that?" They said, "No, you have to pay it or you're not boarding the ship."
Right.
So
everybody was kind of grumbling about that. No one was happy that cost went up like that. But
this is Africa.
This is Africa. This is what happens. And it didn't end up mattering because the channel that we have to use to get into the port in Gambia is tide dependent, and it's pretty shallow as it is. And just weather conditions and where the timing of the tide was, the captain actually came on and apologized, but said we would have to miss that port. So we would have an extra sea day, and unfortunately we wouldn't be going to Gambia anymore. The only bright side was we didn't get charged that $150 per person. So I guess we saved a little money that way.
So our next stop was the Ivory Coast. And we were really excited about stepping foot on the Ivory Coast and just being able to experience that. We hadn't booked a tour. We figured we'd walk around the town. When we had checked out the map before coming on this cruise, it looked like where we would dock would be close enough walking distance to the town. So a lot of times when it's in that way, we will just get off the ship and go walk around and experience it firsthand. Since we didn't have a tour, we casually waited to get off the ship until the masses kind of poured off first and had lunch on the ship before disembarking. Unfortunately, as we were going down to get off the ship, people were being sent back. So we were running into people that had gotten off earlier that said, no, we got up to the gate, to the border where they were supposedly letting people in, and they shut it down. And they said, no, you can't come out here. So there was some miscommunication between the ship staff and the Port Authority staff, because at first it was like, yeah, no problem, you can walk freely here. It's not going to be one of those where you need security. Well, that turned very quickly into no, that's not true. So only the NCL excursions actually got off the ship because they had the police escort. But when you were trying to just do something on your own, they were not letting you walk out of the port. So we ended up getting, what did the captain call it? Getting port, what do they call it? Mm. Short. Oh,
Port block.
nope. Shore leave.
Shore leave was canceled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for passengers and crew. So anyone not on an NCL excursion was stuck on the ship. So this was going to make our sea days in this
5 in a row?
area 5 in a row.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well,
Cabin fever.
we,
by that
yeah,
point.
in this small cabin, which we have a cabin tour of. Feel free to check it out. I keep pointing up here. It'll be up here. But check out the cabin tour. You'll see how small it is for yourself. So check it out.
At this point, we were desperate to get off the ship after the 5 unexpected sea days and the no-go in Ivory Coast. So we were excited to see what our next stop in Senegal had to offer. We booked a tour called Pink Lake Retba and Village Feast that left out of the port city of Dakar.
Senegal is a very poor country. In spite of its wealth of gold, it does not trickle down into the masses to support the needs of the country. So their healthcare, lifestyle, their home needs, all of that is their situation is bad there. We had every child that we saw kept clinging coins at us and things like that. And it's really hard because education or schooling is not mandatory. It is voluntary. So they don't go because they can make more money on the streets begging.
Yeah.
It's a very sad situation. And a lot of the buildings too, we were noticing just seem to be crumbling down all around.
Yeah.
And there were mule driven carts that were carrying the rubble from one place to put rubble in another place. And it was a very interesting situation. So this is one of the locations where we had buses in a convoy. There was about 3 of them,
Yeah.
I think, but they were the big buses with police escort. Our first stop was a market, and we were escorted through this market. It was a vegetable, food, wet market, the whole thing. It broke my heart in a lot of ways. The women with their babies bundled up, and they've got the fish and the flies, and it was just it was an overwhelming aspect of this. So about 20-minute walk through this market. We never felt unsafe. Was an interesting dynamic though. I tried to take a picture of the vegetable stand because it was absolutely beautiful. And this one woman smacked my phone almost out of my hand. However, just another stall down the way, a local woman was filming us. So it was like, wait a minute, this doesn't go both ways, right? So, but we just looked at her and waved and smiled and moved on. It was like, okay, your the culture and your belief, because it is what they say, 99% Muslim. And we do know that their culture does not like photographs. So we respected that and moved on.
After the market, we were taken to the Pink Lake Retba. Pink. Apparently, this lake used to be pink. It was a direct result of a long drought that they had back in the 90s. And it's
a bacteria that was there. And when the water was really shallow with the...
Yeah, it evaporated the water enough that it concentrated all of the salt, and the bacteria thrived on that, and it turned the lake pink, which
would have been really cool.
Very interesting. And people come to see that. And I guess good for them, but unfortunate for us. Over the past, 4 or 5 years, something, they have gotten more rainfall again. And so those lake levels have risen. And so the concentration isn't there anymore, and the bacteria isn't thriving as much, and now the lake is no longer pink. So we got to visit a lake.
Yep.
Looked like a normal lake.
Mm-hmm.
When we got to the lake, we had many ladies that just swarmed our vehicles and were trying to sell all of the wares that they had. They had these big baskets on their heads full of bracelets and necklaces and charms and anything and everything that you could imagine.
Everything was $5.
Yeah.
It was the $5 store.
Yeah, everything. And they, kind of like you would see in some of the other Mexican or Caribbean ports, they were very aggressive trying to sell because we were only there for a very short time, so they had a small window to make whatever money they could, which I understand, but it just was very aggressive. Even when you would say no thank you, it would take at least 10 of those before they would actually stop.
Mm-hmm. And then once that stop was complete, we were heading back to have our village feast. On the way back, our Jeep breaks down. So a lot of people were getting stuck in the sand, and that's, one thing. They would hop out, dig them out, keep going, and that was fine. And then all of a sudden we lost our transmission. We had reverse and higher gears.
Third gear, something like that. Yeah.
We didn't have any low gears anymore. So as soon as the vehicle stalled in the sand, we were stalled. And they could get it push started again, but they could push start it, but only go in reverse.
Right.
So we'd be going in reverse and they would try to pop it into a higher gear. And it was crazy. Black smoke would come billowing out all over the place. And we started thinking, oh boy, okay, how long are we going to be stuck out here for?
Right.
And luckily they had already called another Jeep because they knew that Jeep wasn't coming back in for a while. And they called the Jeep to come and pick us up. I mean, we were out there for about 30 minutes, but it was okay. We were safe. There was no worries.
Unfortunately, that delay cut into our time to eat lunch because we got back and sat down and started having our feast. And we were almost immediately told that, okay, we need to hurry up. We got to get back on the bus and we've got to leave.
Right.
So, that was unfortunate. We had one more stop before we were going to make our way back to the ship. And so the buses took us to an alleyway. It was a side street that had all these chairs lined up, and the local community was going to be putting on Senegalese lion dance show for us. So everybody took their seats. Unfortunately, we were the last bus to arrive, so our seats were all in the direct sun. But we sat down, and they had somebody that was singing. They had dancers all dressed up in traditional outfits that were performing dances, and so it was an interesting experience to see that.
So as we were heading back to the ship, we were stuck in about an hour and a half, a little bit more of traffic. Now, this day happened to coincide with the day their brand new president was being inaugurated, which is fantastic for them. So of course on the streets there were police and all sorts of security going on just to make sure around the Capitol building it was safe. And the Capitol building was close enough to the port where it created a little bit of problems for us getting back to the ship. But luckily, we were on an NCL excursion and we knew they would wait. So we didn't have to worry about missing the ship at all.
So that was our last stop in Africa. At this point, we were moving on to the Canary Islands that are part of Spain. So goodbye to Africa and hello, Spain. We stopped in Cruz de Tenerife and Arrecife, two islands that we've actually been to before. So oddly enough, we chose to stay on the ship for those 2 days and take advantage of a beautiful cell signal that we had and get some work done.
That we haven't had for a long time because we're in Africa.
Yeah. The Wi-Fi has been very poor on this ship, and a lot of that has to do with the satellite coverage for this part of the world. And so when we finally got a strong signal, all of those things that we had queued up and waited until we got this a better Wi-Fi signal, we got all those done in a couple of days. So we're happy for that.
Yeah.
Our next stop was Motril, Spain. Here we took an excursion called Marvelous Malaga. We boarded a large bus that took us from Motril all the way to Malaga, which was about an hour and a half away. Our tour included a visit to the Malaga Castle that gave us beautiful panoramic views of the city and the surrounding water. We got to visit the cathedral. We saw the Central Historic District with all of the architecture that just makes the city very, very beautiful. And it also included a stop for lunch. We've heard a lot about Malaga previously. A lot of people who choose to retire overseas choose Malaga for its beautiful climate and its cost of living. So we could definitely see ourselves coming back here again someday.
Our final stop was Alicante, Spain, which was a lovely city. We were really glad that we just walked off and explored on our own. We had one primary objective though. Boreal Shoes only sells their shoes in Spain. So we had reached out to the manufacturer and asked, where in the world, where in Spain, do you sell your shoes. And they didn't actually have the style that I like there, but they shipped 6 pairs for me to try on. So we are on a mission to go to that shoe shop, and here's how that went down. Today we are in Alicante, Spain, and my number one goal was to pick up another pair of my favorite shoes. Found them on the Camino when I tossed away my oboes, but I need new Boru. The only place that sells them is El Refugio. We actually talked to the manufacturer. They've shipped a few pairs for me to try today. So with any luck, I'll be walking out of here with a new pair of Boru, maybe 2. Let's see. Come on in.
Barcelona.
And I got my shoes. I actually got 2 pairs. So all was right with the world. Hopefully, we will just have to start planning trips around wherever the Boreal shoe stores are. So in the future, about every year or 2 years, so that I can get new pair of shoes, because these by far are the best. And they fit my feet beautifully. So finally, we arrive in Barcelona. And all we have to do is get off the ship, make our way to the airport, and catch our flight home.
We have a 6 a.m. bus to catch this day. And that means the alarm's going to go off super early, but we're going to have a lot of time on the airplane to sleep it off.
Yeah.
This was our 45th cruise together.
Wow.
Not all of them are on Norwegian, but a good portion of them have been.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very familiar with NCL and the product that they are capable of delivering. I'm not sure I felt this particular cruise met those expectations. I was a little disappointed in this. To be fair, not all of this was Norwegian's fault. The west coast of Africa does not get a lot of cruise traffic. They just simply don't have the infrastructure or the ability to support the shore excursions in a manner that today's cruise passengers really expect when they come to countries like this.
Now, of course, no matter what, we kept hearing, well, this is Africa. From the internet to the excursions to the crazy debacles that we kept having to deal with to immigration. All of those different things, yes, where NCL did play a role in the confusion, miscommunication, different things like that. It simply wasn't all their fault.
Right. We were excited for this itinerary because of all of the countries that were listed on it that we'd never been to before. Countries we would likely never be able to get to on our own. We were excited to add 5 new countries to our list of places that we've been. But it was hard not to be disappointed when we took shore excursions in 30, 40-year-old vehicles that broke down on us, and it's not surprising when that happens.
Yeah, maintenance is just not the same as, other excursions and excursion vehicles that cruise ships align with. So it's not unexpected, really. It's just disappointing. And it is disappointing that, we were supposed to have 2 more countries that we never got to add. Not sure when we'll get back there, because y'all know we want to see every country in the world if we can, but not sure when we're going to get back to the Ivory Coast or to Gambia.
Right.
So, would we take this cruise again?
I don't think so. For the cost of this cruise, it wasn't cheap.
No.
Even though it was a repositioning cruise. Being 21 days, it was still an expensive cruise to take. I just don't feel that we got the quality that we should have. And so it's a little disappointing.
Now, to say that, we do have multiple NCL cruises booked in the future. So we're not saying this on NCL. More like just this itinerary. Would we do it again from the cost perspective? Likely not. We'd try and find another way to see those countries if we had them on the list, or potentially lower them on our list and see them some other way. It's been a good cruise. Wouldn't say it's bad cruise at all. It's definitely been very relaxing. The food's been great. The people here, the crew are fantastic. Really, really great. But overall, the ports and the chaos just seemed a little off from Norwegian standards.
And I think Norwegian learned a lot from this itinerary too. This was the first time they've come up the western coast of Africa. They have sailed many times up the eastern coast, but other issues going on with the Suez Canal and the Red Sea and those things are kind of diverting us to this side. So there's a lot of conversations that are going to be had after this sailing is over. I'm sure they're going to be talking to those ports and those countries that that they had to miss, or that just didn't meet their standards either. So maybe if we were to take it again, or one of you would take it again, you'd have a better experience than we did because you weren't the first.
Right. It's always better not to be the first.
Yeah.
Now, from a Norwegian perspective, there needs to be a Wi-Fi solution on this ship. We knew that we would have needed to work a little and do things and wanted to be able to upload videos and chat with family, things like that. So we paid for the middle range Wi-Fi package for 2 devices, which was not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes some expectations of the Wi-Fi working, right? So down in the southern part of Africa and things like that, when it was extremely spotty, hardly ever working, we did go to the internet desk a couple times and talk to the manager, and the answer we got was,
"This is Africa."
And the second one was, I do show that it was working. And if we responded, well, it was extremely slow, I'd click a button and wait 10 minutes and then click another button, wait 10 minutes. That's not necessarily working. I think we need a different service level agreement on what we paid for. And she's like, but it was working. And
Right.
This is Africa.
If it's working, if it's physically working, we can't give you any refund.
Right. So something's got to give there. If they know the product is not good, one, they shouldn't charge full price for it. They should figure it out, or they reserve that for the people that come to complain and say, oh, you know what? You're right. Here's 50% off that package, right? They could figure out a new way of solving the same problem and make the customers happy. But instead, we just had to suck it up. And this is Africa. And that was getting old for us real quick. The internet has gotten better.
As we've come further north, it has
getting better because the satellites are hitting us more and it's stronger signal. But overall, when they have anything in the southern or northern hemispheres, when you're cruising, this is a tip for you. When you're cruising and you're far, far north, like Norway, Iceland, or you're way down south, just know it might not be worth it for you to pay for that premium package.
Right.
At all. It's just not good. So it only causes frustration knowing that you spent all that money and you're not getting what you paid for.
The other thing that got to us was the menus in the main dining room. We were on this cruise for 21 days, and they had 4, it seemed like, menus that just repeated over and over and over again. And, the first couple of times, well, I tried that the last time. Let me try this tonight. And by the end of the second week, I've had all of these things. I don't want any of them anymore. I'm tired of seeing this same menu. So that got very frustrating that they didn't think about that and create a new menu to give us some more variety.
Well, and whenever we've cruised NCL before, it seemed like they've had, when there's a 7-day cruise, they've had 7 different lunch menus, and 7 different dinner menus. They didn't actually overlap. So you kind of had that variety. I would have expected to only see things 3 times on a 21-day cruise.
Yeah.
But instead, it felt like one day, I remember we sat down, we saw the menu, we picked what we wanted, and it wasn't on the, here we have this everyday part of the menu. It was on the changing menu. And we chose it, ate it. 2 days later, we went to the main dining room for lunch. There it was again. I'm like, this is the same menu. What are we supposed to do with this?
We actually got up and left.
We did. We don't go to buffets a lot because of the crowds. They're usually just so many people packed in, and they're on their mission to go get whatever they want.
Bumping
and you're
spilling plates.
And it's just not fun for me. It's almost too claustrophobic, even though I'm not claustrophobic. It just gets to me. You can never find a place to sit. You have all of these different people in the way, and it's just not a pleasant experience. So I avoid buffets at all costs unless I have to go. But we actually chose, when we sat down there and looked at that menu, we said, we're going to the buffet. And I couldn't even believe it. And we had a very nice meal that day.
Yeah.
Because it happened to be
because it was
later,
different.
And it was different. So that's another thing NCL really should look at, is the variety, especially on these long cruises, is trying to offer, even if they only have a certain amount of staples that they can carry on the ship at the time, try and find more variety in those staples. That would be good. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about NCL, this itinerary, our ports, anything that we didn't cover in this video, please feel free to comment below, and ask those questions. You can also email us at theroamingroundtrees@outlook.com. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel if you want to see more videos like this in the future.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.